Mhm. Please come. Good morning, everybody. Am I visible? Neha? Audible? Stylus नहीं.
स्टाइलिश नहीं है.
हाँ. उसकी जगह ये रखा हुआ है. Good morning. Very good morning. Okay, so today, as we discussed, the topic that we will be beginning with is intelligence, right? So, first of all, we will know what are the topics included in intelligence, the structure of the topic. First of all, the definition. There are a variety of definition given for intelligence because it is related to intellectual functioning. And intellectual functioning can get manifestation in different ways. So different people have defined intelligence in their own ways. And you cannot, of course, retain all the definitions. So you have to remember a general definition about intelligence. This is one thing. Second comes the nature versus nurture debate in intelligence. This is a very hot issue, nature versus nurture in entire psychology, and it is particularly prominent in the field of intelligence. So some psychologists believe that intelligence that is measured in terms of IQ can be increased by manipulating the environment, right? So there is a role of nurture in intelligence according to some, and according to others, well, environmental factors do not play a major role in determining our intelligence. Intelligence is more or less genetic, or I would say by and large genetic. So if somebody is born intelligent, person will be intelligent. Do you have the remote? Today everything seems to be out of place. My God, outside temperature 22 डिग्री है, यहाँ 28 डिग्री किया हुआ है. You can keep it. ठीक है? So nothing much can be done about intelligence according to another camp. ठीक है? So we will visit the issue of nature versus nurture, and then there is another issue of debate in the matter of intelligence, that is intelligence an unitary ability or it is constellation of several abilities coming together? So either intelligence is a general factor, it affects your performance in all the areas, or every specific area of intellectual functioning will require a separate type of intelligence. So whether intelligence is unitary or multiple, that becomes the third issue of debate in this topic. And accordingly, we will see a number of theories that have been given regarding intelligence, right? So those will be theories of intelligence. And in the end, we will see the mental testing. That means how to measure intelligence, the intelligence test, and the history of evolution of intelligence test, how the intelligence test originated and how it evolved through multiple types of changes, amendments, and improvements, right? तो ले दे करके यही स्ट्रक्चर है. तो स्ट्रक्चर क्या है? डेफिनेशन, nature versus nurture, then unitary or multiple, And here you get to know about the theories of intelligence. And then the topic of mental testing, that is tests of IQ. Tests of IQ. Okay. So not very large topic, quite condensed and crispy topic, intelligence, right? So let us see. Intelligence is defined as the ability to think rationally and act purposefully. Intelligence is defined as the ability to think rationally and act purposefully. When I say think rationally, I mean to say thinking that does not involve emotional involvement. Okay? Any kind of thinking which is not driven by emotion, which is completely objective and neutral. So intelligent people have the ability to think rationally by setting aside their emotions, right? And act purposefully. That means whenever they will act in a direction towards the goal. That means their behavior will not be wasted. It will always be moving towards the goal-directed behavior. Now, this is the general definition about intelligence. Some people define intelligence as intelligent people have faster brains. According to some other definition, intelligent people have faster brain as they can process the informations not only fast but also accurately. According to another theory, intelligent people have faster brains as they can process the informations not only fast but also accurately. Intelligence is measured in terms of IQ. Intelligence is measured in terms of IQ, which stands for intelligence quotient. Which stands for intelligence quotient. Now coming to nature versus nurture debate in intelligence. Now see, in your question paper, that is psychology paper, you get a common question frequently that discuss the nature versus nurture debate in psychology. ठीक है? Psychology में ये debate बार-बार आता है, हर जगह आता है. For example, some of the psychological traits have greater role of nurture, that is environment, and some have more role of nature. So when this kind of open-ended question will come, you can quote these studies also. ठीक है? कि nature versus nurture में आप ये सब studies भी quote कर सकते हैं. Generally, this theme of nature versus nurture will be visited particularly and specifically by name in the topic of development of human behavior. But set aside development of human behavior, whatever studies are given there, if you remember these studies, you can quote them also in the nature versus nurture debate. Okay? So, nature versus nurture debate regarding intelligence. So, people who believe in the genetic view, nature camp. Let us see the studies. Nasser et al. Nasser et al. Correlated the scores obtained over IQ test. Nasser et al. Correlated the scores obtained over IQ test for identical twins identical twins and found it to be 0.59 and found it to be 0.59. So coefficient of correlation was 0.59, which means significant correlation of IQ between identical twins. While correlation between siblings, that means brothers and sisters who were not identical twins, was 0.5. And the correlation between cousins was only 0.15, that is negligible correlation. So we see as the genetic similarity between the, between the relatives increase, the IQ correlation also increases. That means genes have a powerful role to play in determination of the IQ. So identical twins have greatest correlation because greatest genetic similarity exists there, while distant relatives like cousins have least similarity genetically. Therefore, IQ also does not correlate well. So IQ is strongly influenced by genes according to Nasser et al. Right? Another study was conducted by Plomin et al. Conclusion: as the genetic similarity decreases, the correlation between IQ decreases. Okay? As the genetic similarity decreases, the correlation between IQ decreases. Which shows the strong influence of IQ. Strong influence of genes on IQ. Now, Plomin conducted Colorado adoption study. Plomin had conducted Colorado adoption study over 245 children. Over 245 children. He traced the correlation of IQ between children. He traced the correlation of IQ of children with their biological parents as well as adopting parents. He traced the correlation of IQ of children with their biological parents as well as adopting parents at different age intervals. At different age intervals. And what did he find? I'm changing the page. This is what he found. You can see that children who are being reared and nurtured with their biological parents, children who are living with their own biological parents, the IQ of child and the IQ of parents always correlate high at every age. This is the control curve. So control curve shows children who are being nurtured in their own homes by their own biological parents. We find that with increasing age, the IQ, the correlation of IQ of child with their parents remains high, and at different age intervals it is almost same. That is control group. Now curve BC shows the correlation of IQ between adopted children with their original biological parents. जिन बच्चों को किसी और माँ बाप ने गोद ले लिया, उन बच्चों का IQ उनके अपने वास्तविक माता पिता से कितना कोरिलेट करता है. We find that initially the correlation of IQ of adopted children is more similar to adopting parent, but as they grow up, their IQ begins to correlate better with their biological parents than the adopted parents, than the adopting parents. So BC represents correlation of IQ of children with their original biological parents. With increasing age, no matter what type of nurture or treatment they are receiving from the adopting parents, their IQ begins to resemble their biological parents. Okay? So initially their IQ will be similar to adopting parents as long as they're dependent, they're not using their brains. But with growing age, as they develop more cognitive capabilities, they start using the brain, and the way they use the brain, it is similar to their biological parents rather than the adopting parents. ठीक है? वो फिर अपने जीन्स के हिसाब से दिमाग लगाते हैं, अपने पर्यावरण वातावरण के हिसाब से नहीं लगाते, right? And then AC represent adoption curve, that is correlation of IQ of children with their adopting parents. Correlation of adopted children with adopting parents. We find initially the correlation of IQ of adopted children with their adopting parents is high, but with increasing age the correlation decreases. Okay? So you can write CC represents correlation of IQ of children who are being reared in their own homes. Correlation of IQ of children who are being reared in their own homes. With their parents. Who are being reared in their own homes with their parents. BC represents correlation of children who have been adopted. Correlation of children's IQ who have been adopted with their biological parents. With increases with growing age, which increases with growing age or increasing age. Correlation of IQ of adopted children with their biological parents with increases with increasing age. That means they become more similar to their original parents as they grow up. Okay? And AC is adoption curve. It shows the correlation of child's IQ, correlation of adopted child's IQ with adopting parents. With adopting parents. Correlation of adopted child's IQ with adopting parents, which decreases with increasing age. which decreases with increasing age. Okay. This study shows that as adopted children grow up in age, they become relatively independent from the environment provided by adopting parents. They become relatively independent from the environment provided by the adopting parents, okay, and begin to show similarity with the biological parents who have provided them with genetic endowment, and begin to show similarity with biological parents who have provided genetic endowment. Okay. Although this type of study looks like a medieval study, in a way this is giving support to Varna system in our country. It also breeds a lot of prejudice if you support this kind of study, but then it is scientific study, you can't question it. ठीक है, तो इंटेलेक्चुअल फंक्शनिंग धीरे धीरे बायोलॉजिकल पेरेंट्स की तरफ चलने लगता है. ठीक है, और ये जो जेनेटिक बेसिस था इसका सबसे बड़ा प्रोटैगनिस्ट था फ्रांसिस डाल्टन. इनफैक्ट फ्रांसिस डाल्टन वाज द पर्सन हु डिस्कवर्ड द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस. Although he did not coin the term intelligence, but he was the person who discovered the concept of intelligence. Okay, I will tell you the story of Dalton also later on. Another study came from Chorney et al. Chorney et al है, Chorney et al नहीं है. ठीक है, Chorney et al. Chorney et al. Found that people with very high IQ, that is above 160, are likely to possess some special genes. People with very high IQ, that is above 160, are likely to possess certain special genes. Bouchard et al. Found that the correlation of IQ scores between identical twins reared apart and identical twins reared together were almost same. Had no difference. Identical twins reared apart, वो आइडेंटिकल ट्विंस जो अलग अलग घर में परवरिश पा रहे हैं, और वो आइडेंटिकल ट्विंस जो अपने ही एक ही घर में परवरिश पा रहे हैं, दोनों का कोरिलेशन ऑफ आईक्यू ऑलमोस्ट सेम होता है. दैट मींस परवरिश कहीं भी पाओ उससे कोई अंतर नहीं पड़ता. आईक्यू इज मेनली डिटरमाइंड बाय जीन्स. ठीक है, So these are the 4 studies which support the effect of genes. Okay? Now coming to studies in favor of environment, that is nurture camp. So we just saw the nature camp and now we will see the nurture camp. Beginning with Flynn effect. Flynn effect. The average IQ of the population, increases by 3 points every decade. The average IQ of the population, world population, increases by 3 points every 10 years. So children who are born today, will have an average IQ. After 10 years, the children who will be born, their IQ will be 3 points more. Okay? Now, why average IQ is increasing every 3 years? Every 10 years. It is increasing by 3 points every 10 years. Why? Because as population is increasing, the struggle for survival and competition is also increasing. So in the early times, you don't have to compete too much. So you did not require to use your brain too much. But now you are making more and more use of your brain because you have to deal with more and more competition. Earlier, there was not so much presence of technology, so people did not need it to intellectually function too much. But now you have to function intellectually too much. The competition is increasing, the jobs are less. To get high percentage of marks, you have to struggle more. हमारे टाइम में किसी को फर्स्ट डिवीजन आ जाता था तो उसको स्कॉलर माना जाता था. आजकल के डेट में फर्स्ट डिवीजन को कोई पूछता नहीं है, unless and until you have got distinctions, isn't it? So the people or the population is required to use greater percentage of brain. That means if environment gives enough challenges, the IQ can increase. If the environment is challenging, the IQ can increase. Flynn effect is a support to environmental factor. Okay? Gottfried et al. क्या नाम है? Gottfried. Gottfried et al. Found that children coming from poor family and deprived homes showed poor performance in IQ test due to lack of exposure. ठीक है? So they are not exposed to many gadgets, they are not exposed to many informations, and as a consequence, the items which are present in the IQ test, they could not make a sense out of it, they could not comprehend out of it, and accordingly their IQ score is less. If they are also given equal kind of exposure, their intellectual functioning will also improve. Okay? Skill et al. स्कील अगर याद नहीं रहे तो शकील et al. Skill et al. Showed that environmental enrichment have positive impact in increasing IQ. Environmental enrichment have positive impact in increasing IQ. When children from orphanages are placed in enriched environment, there is significant increment in IQ. Rame and Rame, that is Rame square. Rame and Rame found that children who are put into good schools at early age, children who are put in a good school at early age show significant enhancement in IQ. And I totally deny this. Although I have been put in good school from early age, but I totally deny this. ठीक है, मेरा personal opinion बिल्कुल इसके विरुद्ध है. School has nothing to do with IQ. ठीक है. I have taught many students who have not got very good schooling. They have learned from government schools. They are from mostly Hindi belt, Hindi medium students. But I cannot say that there is any difference in IQ. ठीक है, they might not have too much of exposure, they might not have too much of background or knowledge, but when you talk about understanding, concept, attainment, etc., there is no difference between English or Hindi medium. ठीक है, तो इंग्लिश मीडियम के बच्चे ज्यादा खुश ना हो, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता IQ डिफरेंस में. उनके पास भी उतना ही IQ होता है और कई बार तो बहुत ज्यादा होता है. ठीक है, ओके. नाउ Jensen et al. Concludes the debate. Jensen et al. Concludes the debate by forwarding rubber band analogy. According to which IQ is like a rubber band. IQ is like a rubber band which is potentially stretchable. With training and learning. The degree to which the IQ can be stretched depends upon the child's socio-economic status. The degree to which the IQ can be stretched depends upon children's socio-economic status. So IQ is like a rubber band which is stretchable. So degree to which the IQ can be enhanced or stretched depends upon one's socio-economic status. So children from rich families have greater exposure and learning, and hence they are able to stretch the IQ to extreme limits, while children coming from poorer homes are not able to stretch the IQ, or I would say completely develop their IQ. It is because of environmental factor. And in nutshell, we can sum up the debate by saying that IQ is 70 to 80% dependent on genes. And the debate closes by saying that IQ is 70 to 80% dependent on genes. Okay. Now coming to theories of intelligence. And these theories will wander around the topic that intelligence is unitary ability, or it is a constellation of multiple abilities. Okay. So theories. So we have two set of theories regarding intelligence. Content theories and process theories. Content theory represents the structural school in psychology who try to identify the content and components of intelligence. Okay. It draws from the structural approach in psychology and it deals with what an intelligent person has. It deals with what an intelligent person has. What he contains. Process theory, on the other hand, draws from behavioral and cognitive school. Process theory, on the other hand, draws from behavioral and cognitive school. It represents the behavioral or cognitive approach, and it focuses on what an intelligent person does. And it focuses on what an intelligent person does. So some of the theories will investigate what is intelligence made up of, what an intelligent person has. And some theories will simply talk about how we function intelligently. So there is nothing called intelligent. It is simply learning to function in intelligent manner. So what intelligent person does? So behaviorists never acknowledge the presence of traits. Remember, they always try to study what is observable, and what is observable is your intellectual behavior. So what an intelligent person does. Okay. So according to behaviorists, intelligence can be increased if you are taught the right way to behave and do things. So with enhanced skill, you can do any task very easily. Okay. So we will begin with content theory first of all. And the first theory that came in this regard was Spearman's two-factor theory. Spearman's two-factor theory. It is also known as Spearman's G-factor theory. It is also known as Spearman's G-factor theory. So what is this theory? I'll discuss. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. Now, G factor theory, please come. According to Spearman, intelligence is an unitary ability. According to Spearman, intelligence is a unitary ability which is general in nature. Intelligence is an unitary ability, single ability that is general in nature. It is the common denominator. Intelligence is an unitary ability, general in nature. It is the common denominator underlying all types of intellectual functioning. It is a common denominator underlying all types of intellectual functioning. This common denominator is known as G factor. This common denominator is known as G factor, which when present in greater amounts it is known as G factor, which when present in greater amount makes an individual perform better in various intellectual tasks, or you can say different types of intellectual tasks. Okay. So if you have high G factor, you will do good in all types of intellectual functioning. Say linguistic function, numerical function, spatial function, perceptual function. Regardless of the task, your performance will show up. It will be better. Why? Because you have this G factor. It is a common denominator underlying various intellectual functioning. Okay. Now, Spearman correlated the scores obtained on tests of different abilities. Spearman correlated the scores obtained on tests of different abilities he represented the scores with ellipses. He represented the scores with ellipses. Say this is the score obtained on verbal ability test, and this ellipse represents the score obtained on numerical ability test. We will find that there is a significant degree of correlation between the scores obtained on both the tests. We find there is a significant degree of correlation on the scores obtained on both the tests, verbal ability and numerical ability. That means the person who performs poor in verbal ability will also perform poor in numerical ability. Person who performs good in verbal ability will also show good performance in numerical ability. And this is happening because of G factor. G factor कम है तो दोनों में कम कम नंबर आएंगे, G factor ज्यादा है तो दोनों में अच्छे नंबर आएंगे. Are you getting my point? It is a common denominator. This overlapping area denotes G factor. The degree of overlap is accounted for by G factor. The degree of overlap is attributed to G factor. that is general ability or intelligence. Okay. However, the area of ellipse that does not overlap, is known as S factor. The area of ellipse that does not overlap is known as S factor, which stands for specific factor. So the specific factor is not general ability. It is a special ability. And that is why it is not overlapping. So you are specialist in verbal ability by some extent, and you are specialist in numerical ability by some extent, which has nothing to do with G factor. So there are two factors that determine our intellectual functioning. One is the G factor that gives us a general advantage in whatever topics we are working with. And another is S factor, that is specific factor, that shows the degree of specialization or mastery you have in that particular area and not overlapping with any other area, not in common with any other area. ठीक है? तो ये भी कहना सही है कि जो न्यूमेरिकल एबिलिटी में अच्छा है वो वर्बल एबिलिटी में भी अच्छा होगा, लेकिन ये भी कहना सही है कि कुछ लोग सिर्फ न्यूमेरिकल एबिलिटी में अच्छे होंगे और कुछ लोग सिर्फ वर्बल एबिलिटी में अच्छे होंगे, या कुछ हिस्सा मेरा वर्बल एबिलिटी की तरफ ज्यादा रहेगा, कुछ झुकान किसी लोगों का न्यूमेरिकल एबिलिटी की तरफ ज्यादा रहेगा. ठीक है? This specific factor is known as aptitude. This specific factor is known as aptitude, which is defined as, this specific factor is known as aptitude, which is defined as potential ability to acquire a specific skill. It is potential ability to acquire a specific type of skill with training in future. So let's see the comparison between G factor and S factor. G factor is innate ability. G factor is completely innate ability. You are born with G factor. While S factor is both innate as well as acquired. Aptitude is both innate as well as acquired. It is partly innate, partly acquired. So read the definition of aptitude. It is the potential ability to acquire a specific type of skill with training. That means training is required. So training depends upon what? Training is acquired, isn't it? So potential ability is innate, but whether that potential ability will be reflected or manifested in behavior or not will depend upon if you have been given exposure to training. So it is both innate as well as acquired. Okay. Second, G factor is non-specific and general in nature. G factor is non-specific and general in nature, while S factor is domain specific. G factor is general and non-specific in nature, while S factor is domain specific. Okay. G factor is independent of gender difference. G factor is independent of gender difference, while S factor may show gender difference. So there are some special aptitudes in women, there are special aptitudes in men. ठीक है, उसमें जेंडर डिफरेंस हो सकता है, लेकिन इंटेलिजेंस में कोई डिफरेंस नहीं है, जेंडर डिफरेंस नहीं है. ठीक है. G factor is independent of influence of culture. Culture is environment. Environment has no role on G factor because it is genetic. So G factor is independent of influence of environment, while S factor is culture dependent. S factor is culture dependent. ठीक है. Like not many people in India have the aptitude of driving a formula car. क्यों? क्योंकि फॉर्मूला कार का औकात है ही नहीं इंडिया में मैक्सिमम लोगों को. ठीक है, फॉर्मूला कार रेस में आप पार्टिसिपेट करेंगे, अरे कार ही नहीं है लोगों के पास, तो फॉर्मूला कार कहां से आएगा. ठीक है. सो इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द कल्चर. You know, many people may have the aptitude of horse riding, but they do not know how to ride a horse because horses are not available. Are you getting it? So it is culture dependent. Culture कौन सा commodity provide कर रहा है आपको. ठीक है. Okay. Now, this was the first part of Spearman's theory, two-factor theory. In the later part of his theory, Spearman identified an intermediate factor known as group factor. Spearman identified an intermediate factor called group factor. Group factor is intermediate in scope between G factor. G factor जब भी लिखेंगे कैपिटल G लिखेंगे. Remember, whenever you write G factor, you will write capital G, right? It is intermediate in scope between G factor and S factor. So group factor is intermediate in scope between capital G factor and S factor. Group factor is written as small g factor. Group factor is written as small g factor. Now let us see what is group factor. The test of verbal ability and numerical ability correlate with each other by some degree, which is attributed to capital G factor. That is what we have seen so far. Hana? But two different tests of same domain. Say the test of verbal fluency and the test of verbal reasoning. Say a test of verbal fluency and test of verbal reasoning. They will correlate with each other. The scores obtained on test of verbal fluency and verbal reasoning will correlate with each other by greater degrees. Or more strongly. As compared to as compared to the correlation obtained from in test of verbal ability and numerical ability, as compared to test obtained from correlation obtained from test of verbal ability and numerical ability. This strong correlation is attributed to group factor. This strong correlation that exists between two different tests of same ability, this strong correlation that exists between two different tests of same ability is attributed to group factor. अब अच्छे से समझिए इसको, आपने क्या लिखा है। अगर दो अलग अलग डोमेन का टेस्ट है, एक वर्बल एबिलिटी है, दूसरा न्यूमेरिकल एबिलिटी, इफ देयर आर टू टेस्ट ऑफ डिफरेंट डोमेन, they will correlate with each other. This correlation is caused by capital G factor, that is intelligence. ठीक? The area that is not overlapping is S factor, that is aptitude. However, if we take two separate tests of the same domain, so verbal ability is the domain and two separate tests of verbal ability can be verbal fluency and verbal reasoning. We find they also correlate with each other and stronger than the correlation caused by capital G factor. This correlation, which is stronger one, is accounted for by group factor. So group factor is intermediate in scope. In one hand you have the G factor, in another hand you have S factor, and in between them lies group factor. ठीक है? तो ये two factor theory has now become three factor theory. However, the name is two factor theory. ठीक है? Besides this, Spearman identified three additional factors. Besides this, Spearman identified three additional factors responsible for intelligence. And to remember this, you have to remember prisoners of war, POW. Perseveration, oscillation, oscillation, and will. Perseveration, oscillation, and will. ठीक लग रहा हूं मैं? क्या मीनू? ठीक लग रहा हूं? अच्छा, इसको ऐसे से करने से क्या चेहरा चमकने लगता है क्या? तब मैं टेढ़ा था। Okay. Now see, what is perseveration? Perseveration is the ability to focus our attention Perseveration is ability to focus our attention over a task and sustain it ठीक है, and sustain it. It is also defined as ability to quickly shift the focus. It is also defined as the ability to quickly shift the focus from one task to another. It is also defined as the ability to quickly shift the focus from one task to another. Perseveration. Now, oscillation. Our concentration fluctuates from low to high and high to low while performing over a task. Our concentration fluctuates from low to high and high to low while working over a task. Intelligent people are able to stay with a higher concentration for a stable length of time. Intelligent people are able to stay with a higher concentration over a stable length of time. So their concentration will not move to and fro too much. They will be deeply focused and they will remain deeply focused for a longer period of time. This is oscillation factor. And will, W. Will is a motivational factor which is required while performing over a task. So how much motivated are you while performing a task? That will also determine your intellectual functioning. So intelligence, according to Spearman, two-factor theory is mainly capital G factor and S factor. Besides, there is a group factor, small g factor, and POW. Okay? Now this was Spearman. The second content theory, challenging Spearman's theory, came from Thurstone. Thurstone's primary ability theory. Thurstone's primary ability theory or theory of primary ability. Thurstone denied the existence of G factor and S factor. Thurstone denied the existence of G factor and S factor. He used weighted group index method. He used weighted group index method and discovered the presence of several primary ability abilities which are relatively independent of each other. Now, just for your knowledge, what is group index method? Group index method is a statistical method in which we find the shared variance between the variables. For example, say my home state Bihar. What are the problems of Bihar? Law and order, health hygiene, unemployment, child labor, caste system, dowry, domestic violence. So many problems of Bihar. Now, if the government tries to run programs to address each of these problems individually, then the government will not be able to handle so many programs. So I need to know what is the common cause or common denominator behind all these independent, so-called independent problems. Do they share something in common? So that if I can identify the common factor, then I can only plan for the common factor and I can address all the problems. What is the common problem of Bihar that is responsible for all these? Poverty. Everything boils down to poverty. Unemployment, poverty, child labor because of poverty, dowry because of poverty, caste system because of poverty. So when you become rich, you don't bother about caste, isn't it? So the basic factor behind all these factors is poverty. So when I weigh all these factors, the weighted group gives me the basic factor. So he saw different types of intellectual functioning in human beings and found the shared variance in them. And on the basis of shared variance, he found that there are some primary abilities which are responsible for different types of intellectual functioning. Okay? So using weighted group index method, Thurston was able to identify 7 primary abilities. Using weighted group index method, Thurston was able to identify 7 primary abilities which are independent of each other, relatively independent of each other. So weighted group index method finds the shared variance between different abilities. Weighted group index method finds the shared variance between different abilities in order to find the basic primary ability. Each primary ability forms a cluster. Each primary ability forms a cluster. अभी देखो क्या बोल रही है. You can write, suppose there are 4 different tests of the same ability. Suppose there are 4 different tests of the same ability. V1, V2, V3, V4. So there are 4 different tests of verbal ability. They will correlate well amongst each other. They will correlate well amongst each other, that is with each other, forming a cluster. They will correlate well amongst each other, forming a cluster. The correlation or overlap is attributed to primary ability. the correlation is attributed to primary ability. Likewise, four different tests of numerical ability N1, N2, N3 and N4 will form a cluster and will correlate well amongst each other, forming a primary ability. Likewise, four different tests of numerical ability will correlate well with each other, forming a cluster. This correlation can be attributed to another primary ability. So this is primary ability, say 1, this is primary ability 2. Okay? And the correlation that exists between two clusters or two different primary abilities, and the correlation that exists between two clusters or two primary abilities is attributed to capital G factor of Spearman, and the correlation between two different clusters or two different primary abilities PA1, PA2 will be attributed to G factor. G factor क्या था? The correlation between verbal ability, numerical ability. मतलब दो अलग अलग डोमेन के, तो दो अलग अलग डोमेन के बीच में जो ओवरलैप होगा, that is because of G factor of Spearman. Now Thurston said G factor is insignificant. The intercluster correlation represented by G factor is insignificant which is attributable to capital G factor is insignificant when compared to the correlation that exists within the cluster, as compared to the correlation that exists within the cluster that forms primary ability. Now you look at the board. ये है प्राइमरी एबिलिटी का कोरिलेशन, कितना बड़ा एरिया ओवरलैप. ये दूसरा प्राइमरी एबिलिटी, सी द एरिया व्हिच इज ओवरलैपिंग, लार्ज इनफ. But if you see the intercluster correlation, it is insignificant. So contribution of G factor in intelligence is insignificant. So intelligence is basically multiple primary abilities, and these multiple primary abilities are relatively independent of each other. Overlap is insignificant. ठीक है, तो आपका इंटेलिजेंस 7 क्लस्टर से बना हुआ है. ये सातों क्लस्टर अलग अलग कैपेसिटी में काम करते हैं. इनका आपस में कोरिलेशन बहुत कम है. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर आपके पास जी फैक्टर है तो आप सातों एबिलिटीज में माहिर होंगे, ऐसा कुछ नहीं. ठीक है, तो इंटेलिजेंस इज हाईली डोमेन स्पेसिफिक. अकॉर्डिंग टू थर्स्टोन, इंटेलिजेंस इज हाईली डोमेन स्पेसिफिक. Because primary abilities are relatively independent from each other. Intelligence is highly domain specific because primary abilities are relatively independent of each other. So an individual who is good in one task may not be good in some other task. An individual who is good in one task may not be good in some other task. With help of primary abilities, we may construct psychograms which can be useful in matters of job recruitment. With help of primary abilities, we can construct psychograms which can be useful for the purpose of job recruitments. So you can conduct, psychograms represents the scores obtained. Psychograms represent the scores obtained over tests of different primary abilities. Psychogram represents the scores obtained over tests of different primary abilities. जैसे मान लो विकास का वर्बल एबिलिटी में स्कोर कम है, न्यूमेरिकल एबिलिटी में बहुत ज्यादा है, स्पेशल एबिलिटी में ठीक ठाक है, परसेप्चुअल एबिलिटी में बहुत बढ़िया है। ये विकास का मार्कशीट, ठीक है। शैम्स का देखो, इसका वर्बल एबिलिटी बहुत अच्छा है। मैं दूसरा कलर यूज करता हूं। इसका वर्बल एबिलिटी बहुत अच्छा है, इसका न्यूमेरिकल एबिलिटी कमजोर है, स्पेशल एबिलिटी बहुत बढ़िया है, ठीक है, और परसेप्चुअल एबिलिटी एवरेज है। दिस इज शैम्स, ठीक है। So I have got the psychogram of two candidates who came for test for job recruitment. Now I am looking for people, who are good in, say, numerical ability. I am looking for people who are good in numerical ability. Therefore, I will decide a cutoff. that numerical ability इसके ऊपर जिनका है उन्हीं का लूंगा। तो फिर मेरे टेस्ट में विकास का सिलेक्शन हो जाएगा, ये सिलेक्ट नहीं हो पाएंगे। So with the help of psychograms, we can select the appropriate candidate for our purpose of recruitment. ठीक है, every individual will have a different psychogram. ठीक, so with the primary abilities, single test of intelligence converted into multiple test of primary abilities. Single test of intelligence converted into multiple tests of primary abilities. ठीक है। Now let us see the 7 primary abilities क्या क्या है। Number 1, verbal comprehension. It is the ability of understanding speech and articulation of speech. So speech comprehension and speech production, ठीक है। So basically something like linguistic intelligence, verbal comprehension, ठीक है। How many of you watch movies with subtitles, English subtitles? How many of you do it very comfortably? You don't have any difficulty. And how many people feel difficult to keep track of the subtitles? By the time you read the subtitle and understand, the subtitles change. ये वही एबिलिटी है, ठीक है, कि कितना जल्दी आप समझ गए कि क्या कहा जा रहा है, ठीक है। verbal comprehension, how fast you are able to understand what you have read or what you have heard. Okay. Numerical ability, second primary ability is numerical ability. It is ability to carry out fundamental arithmetic operations. It is ability to carry out fundamental arithmetic operations. Third one is spatial ability. In the third place, we have spatial ability. It is the ability to perceive the changes taking place in the space It is the ability to perceive the changes taking place in the space and mentally rotate the objects. And mentally rotate the objects which are three-dimensional. ठीक है, जैसे मान लो आप एक नए घर में शिफ्ट हुए, अब आपने देखा कि रूम साइज क्या है, और रूम साइज को ध्यान में रखते हुए आपने दिमाग में ही अरेंज कर लिया कि इस कोने में ये वाला सोफा लगेगा, इन दैट कॉर्नर आई विल पुट दैट चेयर, द टेबल विल फिट एग्जैक्टली हियर एंड दिस विल, and then also I will have this much amount of space left. That means without putting the furnitures, you have already seen or mentally visualized how you are going to use this space. This ability is spatial ability, very good for interior designing. ठीक है, और इंटीरियर डेकोरेशन कितने लोगों में है? अच्छा, मुझ में बिल्कुल नहीं है, ठीक है। Then comes, हाँ ठीक है, then comes perceptual ability. It is ability to identify and recognize objects quickly. ये आर्मी में ये टेस्ट होता है. In a table there will be 50 different items and you will be given a second, 1 second time to see them, and then they will be removed from your view and you have to tell how many items did you perceive. ठीक है, 1 सेकंड देख करके कितने आइटम्स को आपने पहचान लिया. ठीक है. मेमोरी, it is the ability to hold multiple strategies in mind while working over a problem. It is the ability to hold multiple strategies in mind while working over a problem. ठीक है. Reasoning, ability to deal with abstract ideas. Reasoning is the ability to deal with abstract ideas. And word fluency. It is the speed with which an individual is able, it is the speed with which the individual is able to search the words from memory, that conveys one ideas. So this was Thurston. So we shall resume tomorrow with Raymond Cattell's theory of intelligence, another content theory. Okay? Until then, see you.